Hi all, welcome to our New Fiction for Book Club's Facebook Live. I'm going to throw over to our host, Morgan Hoyt, to take over and start everything off.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan. I'm a marketer here at Simon & Schuster at Avid Reader Press specifically. I'm very luckily getting to work on Perfect Tunes with Emily. We're so excited to have you all here today. Before we get started today, we wanted to acknowledge this morning we lost our president and CEO, Carolyn Reedy. She had been with Simon & Schuster since 1992, and in the last over 25 years had been a huge champion of our books and their authors. We are so sorry for her loss, and our hearts really go out to her family today. But on a happier note, we are here to talk about some amazing fiction we had come out this spring, books that we think are particularly great for book clubs. And we're very lucky today to be joined by Rebecca Serle, the author of In 5 Years. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
And Emily Gould, the author of Perfect Tunes. Rebecca coming to us from California, is that correct?
True.
And Emily from New York City. So thank you guys for stopping in today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. First, we would love to just get into the meat of what both of your books are about, and if you each could just take a few minutes to describe what your book is in your own words. Rebecca, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Rebecca Serle, and I'm the author of In 5 Years. It's a book about a young corporate lawyer, Danny Cohen, living in New York City, who thinks she knows exactly what she wants for her life, has a very airtight vision. And she gets to live 1 hour, 5 years in the future. She wakes up in an apartment she's never been before with a man she's never met before, wakes back up in her normal life, 4.5 years go by, and then she meets the man who was in that hour with her. And the book really takes place in that time where everything's kind of raveling together to bring her towards that fateful hour that she lived. It's also a story about female friendship, which is a very, very, very important theme in all of my books, but most especially this one, and also certainly in my life. And it's a book about fate and free will and destiny and sort of the dialogue between choice and fixed outcome, shall we say. So, In 5 Years, that's me.
Amazing. And Emily, can you tell us about Perfect Tunes?
Oh, sure. Perfect Tunes follows the story of Laura, a young musician who moves to the big city to pursue her dreams of becoming a rock star, but quickly gets derailed by meeting and falling in love with someone who already is a rock star. She gets pregnant, he dies, and she decides to keep the baby and become a mother very, very young. And by the latter part of the book, like starting about here, I guess, we're seeing the events from the perspective of her daughter, who is now a teenager and is trying to figure out stuff about the father she never knew, and also wanting to escape the sometimes stifling love of her mom. So that's basically, I'm going to put it down just very non-awkwardly now.
Not awkward at all. Well, we're going to get into a ton of similarities that Hannah and I drew between the two books, but hearing both of you talk about them, I'm realizing that I read them kind of around the same time last fall and had the same experience with both of them where I really physically couldn't put them down, to the point where I was reading Perfect Tunes and missed a subway stop because I was so sucked into that first part of Laura's life in the city. And I read In 5 Years in 4 hours without moving from my couch for one moment. And then at the end of it, my legs were so stiff I fell over when I got up to stand up.
Hopefully you took some water breaks.
Oh, for sure. My bladder is not large enough to last that time period. Okay. Well, I'd love to hear in the meantime about both of your guys' lives in quarantine, about how you're doing, how you're finding working in this experience, what you're reading, if it's anything great, and just kind of how you're getting through. Emily, I know we've talked a little bit about it, but would you share with our viewership today?
Oh, sure. Well, I have a 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old, and so an almost 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So mostly my quarantine life is, cleaning up pee that someone deliberately peed on the floor as an act of malice. Not incontinence, just like straight up evil. So that's how things are going on the home front. I, over the course of the past few years, have been working on this book at the same time that I've been, like being pregnant with and giving birth to these two little kids. And that experience definitely like colors a lot of the depictions of early motherhood. I think in Perfect Tunes are some of my favorite parts of the book. And in terms of my quarantine reads, I loved Curtis Sinfeld's new book, Rodham,
which I've picked up since we talked on Thursday.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you were able to get your hands on it. It's like I'm just really, really eager and anxious to talk to friends who've read it, because these are both really good book club books. Our books that we're here to talk about today, Rebecca's book and my book, but like Rodham, now that is a really good book club book. I think kinds of strong opinions about it, and it's going to be hard to predict who's going to love it and who's going to hate it, but I don't for there being any there. So, yeah.
Amazing. Rebecca, what is life like for you right now?
So all of this really kind of started while I was on book tour, because my book came out on March 10th. And then I think we had stay-at-home orders in Los Angeles by like the 13th or 14th. So it was all happening kind of like in real time as I was going from city to city. It was like it was getting worse and worse and worse. And then we ended up cutting the tour massively short. I did 3 stops and then I came back home to LA. And I think a lot of the first part of quarantine was just sort of like, catching my breath a little bit, and also still promoting the book because it had just recently come out. And I was doing that for about 6 weeks. And then I started writing again about 3 weeks ago, which I hadn't really anticipated happening so soon, but is so nice. Emily, as you know, like it's sometimes really nice to lose yourself in a world where this one is struggling. And I've been finding a lot of solace in getting to write. I always do. It's always a place in my life where I find a lot of solace, but particularly now. So I'm very grateful for that.
Amazing. Have you been reading anything great or just focusing on writing mostly?
I have. I tend to be a very big reader when I'm writing, and I don't read a lot when I'm not writing, which I think for a lot of authors is the opposite. But so I'm reading a lot now. I just finished Kylie Reid's Such a Fun Age, which I loved. I read Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes, which was like really delightful. I really loved it. And now I'm reading Una Out of Order. That's my new one. So yeah, a lot of really good books. I feel like a lot of really good books have come out in the last 2 months. Mm-hmm. And I'm very jealous of you having Rodham, because I didn't get my hands on a copy. Well, I asked, and everyone was like, "No one's sending anything," and I was like, "Really?" So
I got like a NetGalley. I read it. You don't be jealous, because I read it on my phone, and like the formatting was all weird, but I didn't. I persevered heroically.
I told them I have like a sketchy
in reading your Jake EPUB file. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an arc that I was able to slip my roommate's the manager of an independent bookstore, so he was able to toss it my way, which was perfect. Perfect. But I needed, Emily's like kicking the butt to like really get it off my TBR and into my brain. So currently reading that.
I'm just out here doing freelance publicity for Rodham.
Yeah. Totally. I do the same for Emma Straub, like in every interview I ever give. I'm so excited for that book. Also have not been able to get my hands on an early copy, but very excited for it. So
amazing. Well, let's kind of delve into some of the themes that I think are present in both books. So first of all, I feel like both of your books deal with the road not taken, that like idea of a path of life that you could have gone down, but instead either choosing to or being forced to go down another one. In Perfect Tunes, it's kind of a matter of circumstance with Laura's pregnancy and choosing to keep the baby. And then in 5 years, it's, I think, maybe a lot more blatant, that like dichotomy that we're living in of her being able to see ahead into a different a different road than the one she's living in right now. And so we're curious whether you guys identify that as a theme that comes in both of the books, how you came to include that in them, if it's an element of your own lives, that kind of thing. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of my books since my first novel, When You Were Mine, have really been about the dialogue between like fate and free will, and which I think is like a similar sort of parallel track to what you're talking about. And that's kind of how I see just the themes of everything I write, because it's the central question of the human existence that I am most interested in, like how much is in our control and how much is going to happen regardless of what we do and regardless of the choices that we make. And so I think in 5 years, there's this very interesting, like the hour that she lives the first time looks identical to the hour that she lives the second time. It's the same dialogue. It's the same, like everything happens the same way, except it has an entirely different meaning. And I'm very interested in that idea. Did what happen because she saw that hour, or was it always going to happen? And like, even though she fights so hard for so much of the book to not have that hour come to fruition, it still does. And like, what does that mean and what does that say? So, yeah. And I also think that there are moments in all of our lives. Like, I know that some theory of physics say that like every single moment is split out into like an infinite amount of moments, right? Like if I touch the top of my like water bottle, or I touch my nose, like that has like an infinite number of possibilities. But I think we can all sort of peel out choices and forks in the road that we feel are more significant than any other ordinary moment. I know that I have like 2 in my past that I can really look at it and say like, oh, there was like a different road. I could have chosen that and it would have led somewhere entirely differently, I think. But that's the thing, is we never really know.
Oh, I just got like a little chill. Just talking about fate. No big deal. Just a Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. Emily, what about you and Laura's road not taken?
Well, the thing about Perfect Tunes is that the road not taken is a character in Perfect Tunes. Like, she has a name. Her name's Callie. So Laura has this friend who sort of has all of the drive and ambition that Laura lacks, but not really any of the like innate talent. And she's the one who does go on to be, at least in the, early part of her career and like in her like 20s and early 30s, like pretty famous. So I wanted to set up that juxtaposition, but also I wanted to write about how you can still be friends with this person who in some ways is like a more successful version of yourself. Which, jealousy is something that I struggle with, I think, because I'm like human. But it's also something that's really interesting to me as something to write about, the way that jealousy has this complex interplay with shame and pride and all the things that we sort of like don't about ourselves that we don't like to look too hard at, that for some reason I love to just like rub my nose up against in writing. So that was one of the most interesting aspects of the book for me, trying to figure out how to be honest about their friendship, and without, falling back into cliches about sort of, best friends who like one of them is pretty and one of them is like smart, or it's hard to bring something new to that dynamic.
Well, it's so apt because In 5 Years really deals directly with that, also that role of female friendship and comparison and persevering through all of those things because that bond exists.
Yeah, Emily, that's such an interesting what you just said about jealousy, because I feel like I have a lot of author friends and we started just sort of like naming it many years ago. We were like, I'm so jealous of you and I'm so happy for you. Instead of making it something that is, like you're saying, instead of making it something that's so heavy and filled with shame, because you're right, like that, it becomes such a massively negative thing where it like jealousy is human and we're all having these sort of like similar experiences, but then somebody, jumps a level or has a success. And I've just found in my own life and my own female friendships, being able to say it and like name it has taken a lot of the power away from how dark that can feel. Anyway, I love what you said. Yeah. Yeah. Female friendship, guys. It's great. It's deep. It's complicated.
100%. All right. Another similarity we noticed between the two books is the way that New York City plays a role. as that setting that kind of colors everything about the characters and how they move and where they move and where they go. And I know that you, Emily, live in New York now. You're in Brooklyn, and you were in the East Village beforehand. And Rebecca, before you were in LA, you were in the city as well. And so we're wondering how your experiences living in the city colored the way that you chose to write the city in the book. Emily, I know you have a shared address with Laura at one point in your two lives. So do you want to start? Take us away.
Oh, sure. I really wanted to go on this nostalgia trip to the East Village of the early aughts, in part because I just needed a break from my life and wanted to go back to a time in my life when I was maximally free and, didn't have responsibilities and children. But also I wanted to sort of memorialize this time in not just my own life, but in the life of the city when things just seemed more possible. Things were much less convenient, but things were much more spontaneous. This is such a dumb anecdote, but I have this really strong memory of meeting up with my flakiest friend in 2003 and just sitting outside of the the Japanese pastry shop in that little corner near St. Mark's Books on East 9th Street, and just sitting on the curb there for half an hour because she was late and neither of us had phones. And she came eventually, but until she came, I just had to sit there, and I couldn't even be where are you? That's me imaginary typing on a
BlackBerry.
It's the kind with the pull-out screen that I eventually had, the Rumor. Great phone.
Oh, really. The Razor.
Yeah. So, just sort of getting that down as sort of a historical document, a little bit of a dip into historical fiction for me. And it was just terrain that I knew really well, so it was easy for me to write about without doing a ton of research.
Yeah. I think that, so I just moved to LA in August, and I spent my whole 20s and the first few years of my 30s in New York. And similarly, I wonder this often, I'm is New York just New York for people in their 20s? Because I think, and I have the same nostalgia about that place, and I wonder, I would imagine people spending their 20s, as you two probably are right now in New York, that it carries over, that it's always that. But similar to Emily, I'm very interested in the way the city seems to hold memory, and how every street corner and every neighborhood seems to hold memory, at least for me. My last book, The Dinner List, was very much about that, about sort of the nostalgia of that era of your life in New York City, and going back to places and trying to recapture that a little bit, what you felt. I'll turn down a street corner sometimes in New York that I haven't been in 10 years, and I'll be flooded with the feeling of how it felt when I was that age. I don't know if that's a New York thing or just because I was that age in New York. I don't have that with Los Angeles, but I think it is also a little bit of a particular thing about New York City and a particular energy that city has. There's just so many memories and experiences stacked on top of each other there. And, it's just a very special place. And also, as Emily said, it's the place that I know the best. And so it's the place I like to write about, because I think in order to write about a place, you need to fully inhabit it. And I'm writing right now, and this is the first book that I've written that in a decade that's not going to take place in New York. So,
Hannah, you're muted.
I'm muted. Sorry.
Oh.
But that's interesting, because we actually have an audience question about if you're writing right now and what you're writing, and then also about your favorite places in New York. So if you could answer those two, maybe we could start with your favorite places in New York, and then move to what you guys are working on, if anything, at the moment while you're in quarantine.
Yeah. all of my favorite places in New York, with my favorite restaurants, they're all represented in the books that I write. So like the restaurants in 5 Years and the dinner list are places that I love to go to, like Snack Taverna in the West Village, and like this really like tiny bar, Daddy-O's, that I used to spend like all of my 20s in New York City in the West Village. So they're all there. They kind of they show up in my work, and I'm writing a new novel now. I think that's all I'm going to say about it. It's a novel.
Yeah, don't jinx it.
That's great. How about you, Emily?
Well, as quarantine kicked off, I was still in like the book promotion time when you're supposed to be trying to publish a lot of essays that are like pegged to the book somehow, but it was pretty impossible to, I don't know. I did my best because I felt like I owed it to the book to, you know, make sure that I was getting out there or whatever. But I'm sort of taking a breather and trying to let stuff percolate right now, which is like a huge luxury and a privilege that I don't have. Like, I'm not teaching this semester. That's really lucky. I'm just trying to like preserve the part of my brain that might be able to write again someday, I guess, and sort of treating that like a job. So I've been doing a lot of, you know, yoga with Adrienne YouTube videos, and shout out to Adrienne. Love you, girl. You're my best friend now, even though we don't actually know each other. And trying to like lightly keep a diary, but it's okay if the diary is just like, you know, today I wanted to slap Raffi. That's my almost 5-year-old, but I didn't, you know, like just racking up little achievements like that. And not trying to put pressure on myself to like make sense of anything or like, you know, process my feelings into something that's for immediate consumption, because that's something that I've done a lot of in the past. Like I started my career as a blogger, and I, you know, have written for the internet a lot over the course of the past 20 years. And it doesn't seem like that's a good time. It's not a good time for that right now. People out here, you know, on the internet, literally living on the edge with I hit delete a lot. That's like my main work right now.
Hannah.
Oh my,
muted again.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute it because I'm also typing, like replying to comments, so I'm like trying not to make noise. That's great. We also have another question, which is Jen wants to know, this goes back to the idea of the path not taken. Did you guys have plans yourself? Did you achieve what you wanted, or did you have to compromise?
I mean, I feel like life is just a series of having plans and them not working out. Like that's just life. That's like, I mean, I think that's what story is, and we are all living story. Like that's what it means to be alive. I think that in some ways, I mean, in so many ways, my life has turned out nothing like I thought it would, and I am so grateful for the ways in which it has diverged from the ideas I had about what it should look like. In a nutshell.
Yeah. Yes, same thing. Totally. Ditto what she said. I mean, I don't know. I had a really like heartbreaking rejection a few years ago, and I was standing outside of my old apartment building, literally crying about it. And I used to live above a bar, and the bouncer of the bar was like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, and I told him like the abbreviated version of like my sat's head tail, and he said, "Emily, every rejection is God's protection."
I love that.
I just latched onto that. Not like God necessarily, you know, you can replace it with like the universe or whatever you feel comfortable with. But, you know, it's whether or not it's like true in any sense, it's like a very reassuring thing to like, why not? You know, why not?
Yeah.
Why not believe that? You definitely aren't hurting anyone by believing. I'm definitely not hurting anyone by believing that. And actually, in the case of that specific rejection, it definitely, it's fine. Like it definitely seems like it panned out, like the way that it, probably a better way than it would have. Yeah. Who knows, man? I don't know. Fate, etc.
Yeah.
I know that question's like a therapy session in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, fate is fickle. So, and then one more, questions about the process of writing. So how long did it take you to write, and what did that research process look like for both of you? Rebecca, do you want to start? Yeah.
Sure. I tend to draft books like very quickly. I like to stay in step with them, because if I fall out of step, it's very difficult for me to get back in. I am sometimes jealous of authors who like sort of luxuriate over a period of a few years. I write books in like 3 months. So I'll write 2,000 words a day, and I'll sort of keep going until there's a first draft that's just laid down, because it's just the best way I know how to do it. And then it'll take me about another 6 months to kind of find my way to revising it. And, I mean, usually In 5 Years came together really fast. I think it was the quickest book I ever wrote. And the first draft looked a lot like what ended up being the final draft, which is oftentimes not the case at all. So it's kind of different for everyone, but I tend to like move through first drafts quickly, because I just find, again, like it helps me to stay in step with the characters and to like keep that mindset. The other thing is that writing 1,000 words is very difficult. The first 1,000 words. The second 1,000 words is very easy. So this is like a system that I've come up with in case any aspiring authors are out there and looking for one. I mean, I don't know if this will work for you, but it works for me, which is that like every day I'm going to have to do the 1,000 words that are hard, but then I get this bonus extra 1,000 words where I'm like already in it and sort of situated, and I can write those relatively quickly. So it's kind of like a twofer, you know? It's like double your money or whatever it is. What was the second part of this question?
The research process, but I think this is pretty interesting, and people ask questions about this all the time, so I'm sure that they're loving it.
Yeah, I really don't like research. I don't like research, and I don't do a lot of it. So that was a better part for me to answer.
And how about you, Emily?
Whenever I do research, it ends up being a complicated form of procrastination. And it's something that I'm like tricking myself into thinking is work, but it's like not actually work. Or maybe it's like part of the process, in the same way that like lying down on the floor and crying is part of the process. I don't know. Like anything can be part of the process.
Yes.
If you deluded yourself into feeling that way. I don't ever get very far past 1,000 words a day. I tend to like top out at like 1,500 words, but I feel like the rules are a little bit different for me for fiction and nonfiction. Like sometimes it can be easier I could like, if I want to sort of like complete a thought, like sort of essayistically, I can definitely write more than 2,000 words a day. But fiction, like 1,000 words is like, that's a ton for me. And that's like also a really, really good day. I am the total opposite of Rebecca in every way. Like I don't write every day. I took forever, it felt like, to finish this book. I had a whole draft that I threw in the garbage. Like it was just like lots of stops and starts, and didn't outline, like, you know, very, very sort of sloppy, had some sort of like bingey weekends with it where I did like a lot of writing or like a lot of revising in like big chunks, and then didn't think about it or touch it for months and months. But that I think is because I am this sort of like ADD addled person who I always have a lot of irons in the fire. And so at the same time that I was working on this book, I was working at a publishing imprint, publishing other people's books. And I was also doing some journalism and nonfiction. So whenever I was like procrastinating, I was usually like procrastinating by working on like one of the other projects. So if the book wasn't going well and I was like just not feeling it, or just like couldn't get to the next stage of it, I could sort of distract myself from feeling totally unproductive by doing one of the other things that I do. but I'm not like recommending that, by the way. It's one of the things that I'm like, I feel that it's very inefficient, and I wish that I could come up with a better system, but for some reason it seems to be like the way that my life has fallen into place, that I always have like a few different things going on at any given time. So, I always have this fantasy that I'm going to do like just the one thing and really, really focus, and then like something else will come and sort of like grab me away from it, and I'll be like, oh, I have no choice. Yeah. So yeah, I guess the moral of the story is that like everyone's different, and like eventually books get written, like even if it takes a minute. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe my next book will be a marvel of efficiency, and I'll just like crank it out in 6 months. That would be amazing. We'll just start it right now, right after we get off the Zoom call.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Well, I think, Morgan, do you have anything else that you wanted to ask or add?
No, I don't think so. This has been so fun. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you, guys. This is so fun.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure. It's great to see you.
Yeah. We have another Book Club Favorites Facebook Live at the end of the month for Ask Again Yes, which is our monthly read for this May. So be sure to tune in for that. And again, a big thank you to both Emily and Rebecca for joining us today. And we can't wait. We really loved your books. So thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
Stay safe. Bye.